Hello, church. I'm back. Last week was interesting and just had a whole lot on my plate and ended up missing our weekly midweek time together. Sorry about that. I did that 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I ended up doing 3 songs to make up for it. And hadn't planned on singing a whole bunch of songs this time, but that's where we're headed. We'll see how it turns out by the time I get to the end of this. I was looking for a song to go along with the theme of the message this Sunday, which is from John chapter 6, if you want to read ahead. And the whole chapter of John 6 is about bread. And so I was looking for a hymn that talked about bread. And I found an old one. It's in our hymn book. I'm not sure we sing it a lot. I can't remember over all my years in church singing it more than a few. We had to have sung it sometime because I know it, but it's an old one. It's from the 1700s. It was written by a guy by the name of William Williams. 2 names, but the same. I guess you wouldn't have trouble remembering his name. In reading the story of this hymn, he was a Welshman and was planning on going into medicine and got saved during the Welsh revival, went on to become a pastor and a poet and a songwriter. And this hymn was actually sung on the way to work and on the way to soccer games when it was originally written and published. But all of these songs ended up not being so much about bread, but just being about how God leads us. And so that is sort of our theme for today, God leading us. And you know, during this COVID time, it's been frustrating, but each one of these songs that God brought to my mind was written in times of darkness, in times of frustration, in times of just looking for God to do something in a person's life, the author's life. But as I sing these and share with you some of the stories behind them, I'm not going to sing all the verses to all of them because we don't have time for all of them, but at least one verse from each one. William Williams ended up in his song, "Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah," giving the story of the Israelites as they traveled through the desert. And God provided for them each step of the way there. Guide me, O Thy great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but Thou art mighty. Hold me with Thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. Feed me till I want no more. The song goes on to talk about the fire and the cloudy pillar, and it ends with them crossing over the Jordan. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Death of death and hell's destruction, land me safe on Canaan's side. Songs of praises, I will ever give to thee. I will ever give to thee. Might want to brush up on that. We're going to sing it as our opener Sunday morning. But there are some other songs that talk about God's leading, and through difficult times, He leadeth me, O blessed thought, was written by Joseph Gilmore. He was a pastor at the Philadelphia First Baptist Church. And he was struggling with the Civil War and bad news coming in, and he wanted to give his congregation a source of encouragement. And so another dark time in our nation, in this song, but God's always there, and He's always leading. Even now, He's leading. And Mr. Gilmore wrote this song. He leadeth me, O blessed thought, O words with heavenly comfort fraught. Whate'er I do, where'er I be, still 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me, by His own hand He leadeth me. His faithful follower I would be, for by His hand He leadeth me. And when my task on earth is done, when by Thy grace the victory won, e'en death's cold wave I will not flee, since God through Jordan leadeth me. He leadeth me, by His own hand He leadeth me. His faithful follower I would be, for by His hand He leadeth me. Reading another story about a man that was a pastor and was a carpenter. And the story goes that he did both of those vocations and didn't make much money at either one of them. And he finally, late in his life, he finally put both of those things together. He got enough money together, and he built his own home. And he hadn't been finished with it long when him and his wife were out of town preaching at some revival services he was asked to be at. And while they were out of town, somebody burned his house down. And it was said that when he got back home and saw the house, he put these words to paper and turned tragedy into a song. In shady green pastures, so rich and so sweet, God leads his dear children along, where the water's cool flow bathes the weary one's feet. God leads his dear children along. Some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. Though sorrows befall us and Satan oppose, God leads his dear children along. Through grace we can conquer, defeat all our foes. God leads his dear children along. Some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. We're going to be having a week of meetings here in just a couple weeks, starting October 10th. It's a week and a half away. Mike Wingfield has been here at Friendship about 6 or 7 times. This may be his 7th time that he's come. And I've heard him a few times without being at Friendship. Mike is from down in Virginia, where I have just moved from a year and a half ago. And he spoke in our church down there, and I've known him over the years for, I don't even know how many years. But it reminded me of another one that my dad fell in love with. And he didn't have him, I think at least one of his churches, he had him come twice. But it was a guy by the name of Red Harper. It was the early 60s and 70s. His first Grace Brethren church, Juniata Grace Brethren church, Red came there, and he was a singing cowboy and had a wonderful testimony. Billy Graham Association made a film soul-winning film out of the story of his life, uh, and took the words of this song I'm about to sing as the title to that. He also came to our next church as a family. When we moved to Minerva, Ohio, it was just a church plant, barely weeks old, months old, and Dad came in as pastor. And I can remember when Red came there, we were in a little tiny old church that we rented, and we actually had the week of meetings in the local school gymnasium, which gave him a lot of room. He showed us that during that time. He showed us some rope tricks and got the lasso or whatever out and spun that rope. He grew up in Oklahoma and went to Hollywood and was in a few films. I don't know those films, but he was led to the Lord by friends, lifelong friends that just kept after him until he discovered Jesus. And it ties in with this theme of God leading us. Because, it's one thing for God to lead, but the reality of it is we've got to follow. And Red sung this song, and it's all about following. And so I'd like to close with this song written by a friend of my family. We actually, I don't know whether it's still around the house somewhere. There's a whole lot of cubby holes in Mom's home, but we had a typewriter which had that little embossed plastic tape, the name Red Harper on the front of it. It was a little portable typewriter, and of course there was no computers back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s. He died in 1982, so I'm not sure if he made it to our church in Troy. If he was alive and traveling, I know Dad would have had him. I don't remember. I just don't remember. But anyway, he wrote this, and I'll close with this. I'm following Jesus, each step at a time. I live for the moment in His love divine. Why think of tomorrow? Just live for today. I'm following Jesus each step of the way. The pathway is narrow, but He leads me on. I walk in His shadow. My fears are all gone. My spirit grows stronger each moment, each day. For Jesus is leading each step of the way. When I was looking for the words to this song, there was a little boy that remembered this song, full-grown man, but he was looking for the words to this song because he could remember his family telling him that he sang it as a little 3-year-old boy. And he changed the words and he sang, I'm following Jesus, get out of my way. Sometimes we need to have that attitude. When we're following Jesus, anything that would come between us and Him needs to get out of our way. we need to stay step in step. I like how the words of this song says, I walk in his shadow. In order to walk in somebody's shadow, that means you got to get up close. Because the shadow really doesn't usually go very far, does it? Anyway, I hope you're excited about Mike coming. Bring somebody with you. Tell somebody about it. We will do our best. Somebody asked me if we were going to film it. And I said I really don't know because I haven't talked to Mike. But I did do a little bit of searching on YouTube to see if anybody else had ever put onto YouTube some of his messages. And they're out there. So I'm not too worried about him not saying that we can't do it. Unfortunately, it won't be live or streaming because we don't have that capability. But have a great rest of the week. Read John chapter 6. All these songs actually fit in with Jesus, the bread of life, because at the end of this chapter, there's a group that were part of his disciples that turned away and didn't follow him anymore. I hope that never happens to you. I hope it never happens to me. And I'm doing my best to keep my eyes fixed on my goal, Jesus Christ, my Savior, my Creator, the author and finisher of my faith. God bless. Go be the church.